When I was a sophomore in college, I was paired with Sam for a semester-long English project. We met a couple times in class, or the library, or the quad, always in public. Sam never did anything strange, but my gut kept telling me something was a little off. He was awkward, like seriously awkward. He didn't pick up on humor like other people, but I mean, he was polite. He always offered to walk me back to my dorm, and if it was dark out, I took him up on it. The campus is big, and we have security stations, but you hear about assaults in the news all the time. Honestly, I thought he was just trying to be a nice guy. He never tried anything or asked to come into my dorm.
So, I guess you guys just want me to read the letter? Okay. What can I say? Things have been hectic with classes and everything else going on, and getting around to putting my thoughts down always seems to take a back seat. I'm sure I've been avoiding this because, well, I've been avoiding this. When I met Brian, he was fascinating, fun, and impulsive. It all seemed to fit so well with our lifestyle then. We partied, danced, we did spontaneous things. I ate it all up. He was my whole world, and I couldn't imagine that that would ever be a problem. And when he asked me to marry him, I didn't hesitate. But I guess people can only see what they're ready to see. Amidst all the fun, the trips, the unplanned picnics, and romance, I somehow missed the fact that Brian had become my whole world. I missed the warning signs that Brian was completely obsessed with control and unhinged.
When I first became a victim of stalking, I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment. My place wasn't that big, but I chose the apartment complex because it was quiet, private, and there wasn't a lot of people living there. At the time, I was 25 and working as a dishwasher in a Chinese restaurant. I was making just enough to get by given the hours I worked. They paid me under the table and were kind of shady, but that is another story. Anyway, the apartment was nice, but it did take me 60 minutes to get to work, which isn't ideal. But everyone in this area seems to have a long commute. Work is work, but I was a homebody, watching my shows, listening to music, playing video games. I love Rainbow Six Comeback. That's really it. I don't often deviate from my routine. TV, home, bus, work, bus, home, TV, rinse and repeat. One morning I looked out my window and I saw this old white van with something painted on the side and two people inside. At first, I just thought they were waiting for someone, so I went back to getting ready for work. I had some cereal, went about my morning. When I left my apartment and walked to the bus, the van was still there. Then things got weird. The driver made eye contact with me and nodded, and I would swear that he said, "We know." So that wasn't comfortable at all. And I just sped up my walk to the bus stop because there's usually a group of people waiting there.
When I was 22, I graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in marine biology. I was really excited when I got a position in the Miami Seaquarium because it was near my hometown. I worked on a team researching the impact of commercial fishing on the stone crab population. It was hard work with long hours in the heat, but I love being out on the water. And we worked with other teams throughout South Florida who were doing similar stuff. 2 months into my new position, I met Camilla. She had just been assigned to the Middle Keys team, and we hit it off during our first dive trip together. I mean, she was fun and charming. I couldn't help being attracted to her. We lived a couple hours away from each other, so we only really talked by text and FaceTime. In the beginning, it was the normal getting to know you stuff, the flirting. I mean, we saw each other casually for a few weeks while I was still in the Keys. Things like lunch dates or coffee after work, but long distance is hard. And I wasn't looking for anything serious. We were researching together, and I was always busy out on the water collecting samples. I didn't have time to text every minute of the day, but Camilla obviously wanted something more, and I mean, I wasn't into it. She was too much, I guess. Her texting just, like, never ended. I liked her, but we were clearly not on the same page. She started getting too intense.
The semester ended and the English class was over, but Sam continued contacting me. The messages turned from awkwardly asking to study together to him asking me on dates. Sam knew I was in a relationship, and I reminded him about Paul over and over, but he just kept asking. He wasn't getting the message, or he refused to get the message. When I blocked his number, Sam started emailing my student account. He would tell me he wished I hadn't gotten together with Paul, or that I would change my mind once he showed me what an amazing guy he was. He would email me 50 times in a row with, "Hello, what's going on? Just checking in because I haven't heard from you. Hello, you there?" Then Sam began randomly showing up in buildings where I had class, and I started making excuses for him. I told myself maybe he started a late course, or he's meeting people for school stuff. Then he started following me at restaurants on campus and places I studied. It seemed like everywhere I went, he just showed up. If I was there, you could be certain that Sam was there too.
Look, I knew who he was when I agreed to marry him. I knew about his assault conviction. I knew about his heavy drinking. I guess I didn't care, or I didn't want to care, or I just thought he would change for me. Honestly, I don't know. He explained away his assault conviction as a drunken mistake, and it wasn't only him that was drinking a lot. Lord knows I was throwing back drinks right beside him. But when you love someone, you somehow lose objectivity. Like your love is the only thing that matters, and that somehow love will heal and conquer everything. Even the issues you know are there, but are ignoring. Love makes you stupid. The first time Brian hit me, I didn't see it coming. It was 2 days before our wedding, and we were trying to figure out the seating chart. He was so angry at the fact that my extended family was going to be there, and that their presence was increasing the bill for our wedding. Since my father cut us a big check to cover the wedding expenses, anything that we didn't spend would go directly into our pockets, and Brian clearly wanted that.
When the bus came, I sat in the back, like usual, but by the time I sat down and looked back to the van, it was gone. Halfway through my ride to work, I realized that the same van wasn't driving past beside the bus. And when they passed, both of the guys in the front made eye contact with me again, but didn't say anything this time. I got off the bus, headed towards work, flipped my hood up. I guess out of nervousness, it wasn't even that cold. I just thought, who are these people? On my way to clock in, I saw my boss, Mr. Kwan, and began to tell him what had just happened to me. It's nothing. You probably misunderstood. He probably just said, "What's up?" "You're right. I shouldn't worry," I responded. He had a point. When my shift ended, I headed back to the bus stop, and instead of going home, went over to my ex's apartment complex. And I guess that requires some explanation.
We were friends on social media and all that, so she could see where I was at all times. It got really weird when she started sending me screenshots of myself and questioning my location. I mean, who I was with, why I was there. Even when I went to the gas station or the bank, she would just, message me. She would text 20 times in a row, and since my read receipts were on, she could see that I saw her text and didn't respond. I mean, this would really set her off. She would get, crazy. If it was anyone else, I would just cut them off completely. I mean, block their number, their social media, but, I had to work with her, so I turned off my location for all my social media, hoping it would help. I started getting strange friend requests on my Facebook and my Instagram accounts, and my friends started getting friend requests from profiles claiming to be me. I mean, I was getting strange messages, people claiming to be friends of Camilla, worrying about her since our so-called breakup. I made the mistake of responding once, and this person told me Camilla was suicidal. I was worried about it. I texted her, asking if she was okay, and she immediately started begging to meet up one last time so she could apologize. I mean, I was beyond frustrated, and I felt totally trapped, I guess. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her and only to email me if it was work-related. I hated being that person, but I threatened to report her for boss if she didn't stop.
It was freaky. It was like being part of a reality show you didn't sign up for, and it's scary. I started asking Paul to walk me places. After Paul started escorting me everywhere, I didn't see Sam as much. After a couple weeks, I stopped seeing Sam altogether and went back to my normal routine. I felt bad inconveniencing Paul, but he was super nice about it, and I think he secretly liked protecting me. But in reality, Sam hadn't stopped following me. He just got better at blending in the crowd. I would look up from a table and see him in the corner staring right at me, or looking through a classroom window while I was in class. If I was working in the library, I'd see Sam, so I would leave and go study elsewhere, and 20 minutes later, there he would be, at a table across the room, just staring. Not like a serial killer or anything, but not like he was in love with me either. I can't describe the look, but it's really unsettling.
I should have turned and run as soon as he hit me, but he apologized. And we were under a lot of pressure, and people had already booked tickets and hotel rooms to come to the wedding. So I justified his actions to myself. After the wedding, things were okay until we got back from the honeymoon. Then the verbal abuse started. The yelling, the screaming, the control, the limits on my spending, travel, social life. Then the physical abuse, when I somehow didn't meet standards that I didn't know existed. My parents didn't raise the kind of woman who sits back and allows herself to be treated like that. My family's too strong and independent for that. The fog of what was happening cleared for me when I realized I hadn't seen my friends in a year. That I was scared in my own apartment. That I realized I wasn't pursuing any of my own goals. No one should live like that. About a year ago, I got the first protective order against my soon-to-be ex-husband. Though it still feels a bit strange saying that. I always thought I would be married forever. I didn't know if the evidence of abuse was going to be enough, or if I'd be able to recall the events in front of the judge without completely breaking down. And writing it now, I'm crying. I'm simultaneously afraid, ashamed. It's all just so disturbing. But the absolute best feeling was when the judge ruled in my favor. I couldn't tell which way the case would go, but hearing him grant the protective order gave me a sigh of relief. I could sleep for the first time in months.
Julie and I broke up a month ago. Well, she broke up with me. I don't want to get into reasons she gave, but there weren't any differences that couldn't have been overcome. I tried. I sent flowers, but they were cheap ones because I didn't have a lot of cash. I wrote an apology, but nothing changed her mind. So when I get to the parking lot of her apartment, I saw her walk out of the building holding her lunch and got really excited. Until I realized that she was walking directly towards that white van that was following me earlier. The driver's side window rolled down. Julie kissed the man driving, handed him her lunch, and she walked back inside. Then things started to make sense. This guy's after Julie. I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I think he felt threatened by me. So he decided to try and intimidate me waiting outside my apartment. I went home and went back to watching my shows and playing my games. I like to get dissolved into the games, so I did that and then just headed to bed.
It was the end of the stone crab season. My boss told me we were meeting with Camilla's team down in the Keys on the last week of May. I was so nervous about seeing Camilla. She blew up my work inbox with emails about any details she could think about for the upcoming trip. I got so frustrated I decided to show my boss what was going on. He saw the hundreds of emails she'd been sending me to work, just that week. But instead of seeing this as harassment, he told me they all appeared work-related, and I should review the company policy on dating coworkers. I confided in my colleague Jeff about what had been going on. I told him about the texts and her attempts to break into my social media, the hundreds of emails she sent under the pretext of work, how much I dreaded spending the next week near her. He was shocked and told me he would do his best to keep us separated, but that's hard to do on a research boat, you know? In the Keys, Camilla acted like we hardly knew each other, and I thought, okay, I guess she's moved on and found someone else. Jeff told me he had asked her about the texts and emails, and she acted confused, like she had no idea what she was talking about. She told Jeff she ended it with me months ago. This was annoying. I thought this ordeal was finally over. If this is what she needed to tell herself, fine. I could live with that as long as she stopped bothering me. And when I got home, there was a styrofoam cooler on my steps. When I opened the box, it was filled with these, stone crab legs. Everyone in my life knows I hate the commercial fishing industry. I studied these creatures for a living, and I've been a vegetarian my whole life. The season was over, so I knew that these legs had been illegally harvested. There was no return address or tracking, just a stamp postmark, Summerland Key, Florida. I was pissed. I was pissed off. I drove the box and my laptop to the police station. I told them I knew Camilla had sent the box. I explained what I did for a living and showed them all the emails and the text messages she had sent me over the past 4 months. I was basically laughed out of the station. They told me it's not a crime to be in love and there was no evidence that she sent the stone crabs. One cop asked if he could have the crabs. It was his anniversary.
I reported Sam's behavior to campus police, but they brushed it off. They actually told me he had a crush and I should feel flattered. They complimented my looks, told me that they understood why he was interested. I told them in clear terms that this was much more than Sam being interested. But I got nothing from them. And it wasn't just the police. That's what everyone kept telling me. Oh, he just likes you. He'll get the hint soon. I told everyone it had been months. How long does someone need to get a clue? The police asked if I felt like he would hurt me, and I said no, because I honestly didn't feel like he would. But that doesn't make that behavior okay. When they asked if he had ever threatened me, I answered honestly and said no. They told me Sam's behavior can't be called stalking unless I had proof that he was going to try to hurt me or had threatened me. They told me to come back if he ever threatened to physically hurt me or my friends. There was no tangible evidence he was stalking anyone, and I lost it. I basically screamed at them, no evidence except for the fact that I can't go anywhere without him following me. What the hell does he have to do?
The first year of the protective order has been interesting, though. I haven't spoken to Brian for obvious reasons, and I'm healing well. I feel more at ease, but there are some things that started happening recently that I'd like to get your thoughts on. I think Brian has been coming to my home. I see a car that looks like his parked in the morning, but it's kind of far from my normal parking spot, so I can't really see who's inside. I'm pretty sure it's him because the car resembles his, and he stares right at me, just watches me, but I can't say with 100% certainty. The deputy in court told me to always have a copy of the protective order with me just in case, and that I should call the police if I see Brian. But I don't even know if this counts. I started seeing him a few weeks after I filed for a divorce. I knew the filing would upset him, but there's a protective order in place. I didn't think he'd be crazy enough to actually do anything in retaliation of it. I'm really not sure anymore. And I keep getting really threatening texts being sent to me, but it's a different number every time. I can't help but think it's Brian. It sounds like the way he talks, but how do I prove it? And a few weeks ago when I was leaving campus, I found a letter under my windshield wipers basically saying that bad things would happen if I didn't withdraw my petition for divorce. Just like everything else, I think it's Brian who left it, but I don't know for sure. I kept the letter just in case, and I can use it for court. I also made an appointment with my attorney on Monday of next week. I'll see what she says about it along with the many texts, and if we should report them.
The next day, the van was there again, but the guy tried to be slick and change the way he looked. I ignored him. But I'm not going to lie, it was a little scary. I was so shook up about the van following me, I was almost hypersensitive to everything about me. I could feel his eyes on me, piercing into my brain, trying to get into whatever reaction he wanted from me. I just kept repeating, "Stop staring at me, stop staring at me," all in my head. I went straight to the back corner with the seats with the tinted glass wall in front, in hope of some privacy. Something was off, though. I felt a new presence looking at me. I looked, but no one was there. Just the usual people on the bus. I could feel eyes on me, watching me, probably listening in as well. I couldn't handle it and decided to get off the bus. As soon as I stood up, the driver began to talk to me. "Step back. Doors are closing." That day was just the beginning. The day after and the following day, the same white van with the same person, the same eyes stared back at me. But this day he was following the bus.
At this point, I knew my colleagues wouldn't believe Camilla was stalking me, and the police didn't see any crime in her behavior because she wasn't physically harassing me or harming me. But she knew where I lived, where I worked, my friends, where I went out. I had no idea what else she was capable of. I dreaded work. Her emails never ended. It was nonstop. I was afraid to report what was going on to HR because I had violated the company policy by dating her. I gave her my personal information. I felt so alone. I had worked so hard to get where I was, and I so desperately wanted this person to leave me alone and let me live my life. I tried to get a protection order, but the best courts could do was give me some kind of temporary injunction for 15 days of constant messaging over text and email. Camilla realized I'd finally gotten the authorities involved when the sheriff showed up at her house to serve the injunction. On day 16, I opened my work inbox to hundreds of emails forwarded from Camilla. Except it wasn't just to me. It was to every colleague we worked with in the South Florida. Camilla had edited the emails to make it look like I had sent all these crazy messages to her. HR called me in. I tried to show them Camilla was the one harassing me, but they went with the information they had in front of them. Camilla was claiming her email account had been hacked, and that's how the messages were released. HR placed me on paid leave for 30 days while they investigated.
We talked to a different officer who showed more concern and actually took our statement. This officer told us that we had limited resources, but that there's a stalking advocacy group that operated in the city. Somehow Sam had found out we had gone to campus police. I don't know if they questioned him or not. I felt like something bad was going to happen, but he was going to take his anger out on me. Things were escalating, but there was no resolution. A few nights later, I was coming up from the laundry room back to my dorm when I saw that familiar-looking jacket turn around the corner. The building is secured by keycards, so unless you are a resident or accompanied by a resident, you're not allowed to be in the building. It was a female-only floor, and a lot of us felt safe enough to keep our doors unlocked if we were just popping out for a minute. I dropped the laundry basket and ran and prayed my friend's dorm was unlocked. I burst into her room, totally trying to lock the door before he chased me. I scared the hell out of her. I could barely get the words out of my mouth to explain what I was doing in her room. I just kept repeating, "Call the police, call 911.
This stuff is kind of scaring me. But what happened today is what really inspired me to write you this letter. I received another letter under my windshield wipers, but this one was a death threat. It said I'd be killed because I didn't comply, with his previous letter. Knowing Brian and our history, I wouldn't be surprised if it was him. He's threatened to kill me in the past and has gotten close to actually doing it before. This stuff is getting out of hand. I just want it to be over. I'm so sick of all this. But I don't know if I'm overreacting. Just in case, though, I made plans to have friends with me throughout the day, and that way nothing can happen to me, and if something does, at least someone will be there to witness it. So I'm taking precautions.
The campus police arrested Sam for trespassing. He lied and said he was waiting for a friend to get ready and she had let him into the building, but this friend never materialized. They couldn't charge him with stalking. They told me again he had never threatened me. The campus police was just useless, utterly useless. They couldn't help me, and I thought I understood what it was like to feel completely helpless. But I had no idea until that day. I took our statement and a copy of Sam's arrest report to the nearest police precinct. They told me I was not the first person to come to them about being stalked by a fellow student. This was in 2010, and under the Title IX, there were no clear definitions for stalking. They said I had the right to speak to a magistrate, but with just the on-campus trespassing arrest in our statement, I didn't stand a good enough chance of getting a protective order. They were right. The magistrate kicked it back to the school administrators. I was denied. It was crushing. It was like drowning in the sea, choking for air while you're watching a group of people standing on a boat with life preservers, and they just refuse to throw it up to you. By midway through the spring semester, I was terrified to be on campus. I skipped classes. I was scared to go anywhere without Paul. I'm sure it wasn't very fun to be around. I treated him more like a bodyguard than a boyfriend. I changed the way I dressed. I made myself as unattractive as possible, and I don't even know why. Maybe if I was hideous, Sam would move on. So that approach did wonders for my self-esteem, and nothing to help the situation.
I usually get off the bus and switch to another bus so I'm not followed, but this time I just stayed on the bus. I felt fearful. Not knowing what they were talking about or planning, I had to change my whole routine again. I decided to call the police and alert them about the van. They accepted my call and went to investigate. I didn't want them to come inside my house because it looked obvious I called police on the van. One of the policemen told me he was just a plumber waiting to begin work. He wasn't threatening at all. They were just hanging outside the van. That bastard was there the next day too. Calling the cops did nothing. I start every morning calling 911 on the guy outside my apartment building.
I couldn't handle even working with her. I mean, I knew it was a matter of time before she did something worse and ruined my reputation permanently. I started applying elsewhere. At this point, I was willing to move anywhere just to get away from her. Kumi had found my parents' address. I mean, my parents are devout Catholics, and I hadn't even come out to them yet. She sent them pictures of us together, photos I didn't even know she had taken. I had never wanted to come out of my family that way. I told them I was moving away from her, and instead of being upset about me being gay, they were worried I hadn't come to them for help. I found a job across the state. My job on the Gulf Coast didn't pay near as much. We were researching the habitat effect of red tide and constantly finding dead animals in the water from algae bloom. I mean, everything just kept piling up.
Sam was ultimately fined for trespassing and put on academic probation for the arrest. That was all the school said they could do. He was still free to roam campus. When I did leave my dorm, and that didn't happen often at all, I constantly thought I was being followed. My friends stopped calling me to hang out. because they knew I would say no. I needed Paul for everything. I relied on him, and he supported me. He really did. But the more he pushed me to go out, the more I retreated into myself. It got so bad. I was skipping classes, and not one or two, but all of them. My grades dropped, and my professors emailed me asking if I was sick. I ended up passing only 2 of my 5 classes that semester. And I stayed on campus that summer to take part in an internship I had accepted the previous fall. I didn't see Sam that summer. That made it easier to take back some of my independence. With continued therapy and my advocacy work, I felt more empowered. I finished my degree at the university, but not with the GPA I had hoped. I had to retake the classes I failed, which costs real money.
I was afraid to make friends, let alone attempt to date anyone. I felt so isolated. I didn't have my family close by. My whole life had been upended, and I didn't understand why this random girl wanted to control my life. 2 months after I moved, I received a letter from the Florida Wildlife Commission. I had been accused of illegal harvesting. They had opened an investigation. I was still under 90 days probation, so they just fired me. I tried to explain to the investigators that this was an insanely false accusation and that I was being targeted by this woman. I showed them the obsessive texts and emails, and I told them about the illegal catch Camilla had sent me. But, again, they said I had no proof it was her. I had to move back home and live with my parents. I became depressed, and I was too paranoid to leave the house most of the time.
I just wanted to let you know what was going on. Maybe you can make sense of it all. You are my voice of reason. Soon it'll all be over, right? Like you always tell me, everything has a way of working itself out. In the event that this is the last letter I write you, know that you're my everything. No one, seriously no one, has stuck around with me. No one cares about me but you. From the beginning you've been with me, and every time I make stupid mistakes, you don't hold it against me. You've supported me and been patient with me, and that's all I could ever ask you for. I just want to make sure you know, because I know I can be flaky and frustrating. Thank you for everything. With love, your friend, Cindy Smith. I received this letter in March of 2016. Before I could even respond, Cindy was dead.
Looking back, I feel like I handled the situation as best as I could, but when I found out through Jeff that Camille had gotten my position in the Seaquarium research team, I thought I was going to lose my mind. 2 weeks later, I saw Camille at the grocery store. She stared me down. When I realized she was following me up and down the aisles, I lost it. And she started screaming at her. I don't know what I would have done if my mom hadn't stopped me. The investigation's still going on. I'm still looking for work. I feel like my career was ruined before it even started. I see my therapist 3 times a week. He's pretty much the only person I feel safe talking to at this point. She scared me so badly, I don't use the internet or even text on my phone anymore. I don't know if I'll ever find any kind of normal relationship again. I'm just scared it's gonna happen again.
I couldn't take the same route to work anymore. If I took a taxi, the van tailed them. I called the police day after the day, and they did nothing. Nobody was listening to me. Nobody was helping me. I felt helpless. The police gave me the number of someone who could help me, and it was a shrink. A shrink. So I ripped the number up and called them back. But this time when they came out, they didn't arrest the guy waiting outside my apartment. They arrested me. They held me in jail for a couple of nights and then let me go. Guess who was at my apartment waiting for me? So you know what I did? I called the police, then the sheriff. I even called the Secret Service. And this time, they charged me with a Class 1 misdemeanor. When I was the victim, I was the one being terrorized. It was me. Why was I getting punished for being stalked? No matter who I called, no one helps. No one. They all just try and kick the can down the road.
Between the therapy, the classes I had to retake, and times I had to cancel work because I was scared to leave, the money I lost, I added it all up, and Sam costed me $14,000. Sam never came back to school. Years later, I learned he had been arrested for attempting to kidnap a girl he went to high school with. I was not his first victim. I wonder how many women he terrorized before he was finally stopped. If he was stopped.